Welcome to Mo's Market Pulse. I'm your host, Sarah Mokram, founder of Mo Digital Solutions, where we help businesses hit their revenue goals and thrive. On this podcast, we talk with industry leaders about their business, market trends, growth strategies, and what's ahead. Today, we will be hearing insights from Chris Sopher, co-founder and CEO of Letterhead. Chris, thanks so much for taking time to be with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, Letterhead sits at kind of a fascinating intersection of technology, publishing, and community building. I'd love to take our audience on a journey, starting just with your story and your business, moving through the broader market, and then diving into how you think about growth, challenges, and what's happening over the next 12 months. So let's first start with what is Letterhead? What does the company do? I'm assuming there was an initial problem that you were trying to solve as well.
We at Letterhead run an email newsletter execution system. It's software that helps publishers, content marketers, agencies build, manage, grow their email newsletters on their existing content management system, ESP, whatever tools they're using. We kind of come in over the top and help them get more value in terms of increasing their open and click rates, improving their deliverability, driving more revenue, and cutting the time it takes for them to produce great newsletters on a regular basis. And we got into that business, yes, from our own problem. We ran a media company for 9 years called Where by Us, which owned a bunch of local media properties in different cities around the country. And in that business, we became, over time, very email oriented. We started out doing a lot of events and conferences and trade shows and things like that in our city in Miami. But then we started to see a lot of value in this email list that we were building and started doing a regular daily newsletter. And then we took that model to a bunch of other cities. And as we were doing that, we ran into a lot of production problems that just came from like how long it took to make a good newsletter day in, day out, procedurally, like copy pasting stuff, getting things into the email, checking it, getting the right advertising units in there, measuring the results, understanding our user analytics. There's a lot of work that went into that. And it was a big tax on our ability to scale the business. And so we started building some internal software essentially to help us with that. And in 2021, we started working on it as a separate product. And at the end of that year, we spun it out into a separate business. And so since then, we've been running at Letterhead fully. We sold some of the media brands, to other folks, and we're fully in the software business. The awesome job now of working with several hundred different publishers and agencies to help them maximize the email channel and do more cool stuff with newsletters by making it easier and more profitable to run. So yeah, we've been in that software business now for 3 years, and it came directly out of our lived experience, kind of struggling every day to make it happen.
That's great. And from your previous venture with the Whereby.us, what lessons from that venture would you say kind of shaped what you're doing today or how you're approaching this new business?
So many. I think you get a lot out of the first thing you build as a kind of growth company that you take into the second one. And it's just like so difficult to imagine that at the time. And then the benefit of hindsight, you're like, oh, I get to do this way smarter the second time around. I think there are a couple of things I would highlight. One is just understanding the break points where things get harder and need to change. We in that business started as 3 people. We went to 40 people. At Letterhead now, we're almost 60 people. And, as you go from 3 to 10 to 20 to 50 people, different things are happening in the business, right? You have to be good at different things. And what's required of you as a leader, but also just as like a person, anyone working at the company, is a little bit different in each of those phases. If you've been through it before, you have a recognition of that. Like, oh, this phase looks different than that phase. But when you're going through it the first time, it just sort of feels like one long straight line. And so, it's like the frog boils slowly kind of a thing, the temperature goes up a little bit at a time. And so you have to really pay attention to that to understand what's changing and adapt your strategy based on the growth of the business. I think that's a big one. And the other one, I think, is just the importance of navigating by your customers. In the media business, had a lot of ideas about what we wanted to do and the things we were interested in and what got us excited. There was kind of a core of having gone out and talked to the people we wanted to be serving and the readers that we wanted and spent time with them, not just like, hey, do you like this thing? But like literally walking around town with them and really immersing ourselves very deeply in what it was like to live in that city. That gave us this like very fine grained kind of fabric about what we were trying to do. And we took elements of that into Letterhead that I think have served us well too, just being very user centric and trying to really listen and hear customers when they tell you things and internalize that and just be kind of user centric in what we do. I think that was really baked into what we did in the media business. And I think that's helped us make better software at Letterhead because we weren't coming at it from this place of like, how can I build the coolest feature or here's something I want to engineer. It was more like, okay, we know these people and what their experience is and where the pain points are. And let's see if we can make something that will.
So shifting gears now a little bit, now that we've gotten some information about Letterhead and how it came to be, there's a lot happening in the email and content space, and newsletters have accelerated, right? And especially post pandemic, what macro trends are you watching most closely, and how are those influencing your guys' roadmap?
Biggest things that we're paying attention to right now are around first party data, the kind of evolution of the way privacy and information works on the internet, the cookieless future and these kinds of things. And then also what's happening to the content media landscape with AI and with some of the changes to kind of people's platform behaviors. I think those are the two most important things for us. On the first front, it probably goes without saying for people listening to this that like everyone's putting a lot more energy into first party data. How do they capture and maintain their own relationships with their customers and know who they are with emails and phone numbers and things like that? And particularly in like the media business and, with agencies and so forth that we work a lot with, one of the things we've seen over time is that people will kind of lease out a lot of their core value to third party platforms, right? Publishers have been through multiple iterations of we have to go invest in Google search and getting traffic from Google. We have to invest in Facebook. We have to invest in video. And those are not wrong investments necessarily, but you've seen a thing where the industry's been caught repeatedly in a situation where so much energy has gone into investing in a third party platform. They change their algorithm, they change something about how it works, and suddenly your business is like mortally wounded by that change overnight because you don't have enough of a defensible, moat and sort of strong core at the center that you control that's impervious to those changes. And so I think folks have gotten wise to that and are putting a lot more energy into our direct relationship with our customers and with our audience. And, obviously we play a direct role in that with what we do. That's a big part of our mission at Letterhead. So we pay attention a lot to those changes. And on the content side, I think our philosophy is just that as it gets noisier on the internet and there's more slop pushed at people, AI generated or not, there's just more sort of stuff out there, right? Anybody with an email inbox is like familiar with this problem. The stuff that is of quality, that is respectful to the user and feels like it's made by other people or by businesses that are care and are doing a smart job about engaging with people and so forth, are going to be the things that win in the long run. And I think it doesn't feel like that in the immediate term sometimes because the market's very frothy and it's like, oh my God, I got to go catch up. In the medium to long term, it's like there's going to be a flight to quality and to things that feel real and substantive. And we're in the business of trying to help our customers with that too. I mean, that's our mission statement is about, unlocking the potential of email, but with newsletters that people actually want in their inbox. And that second part of it is just critical because, very easy for me to fill your inbox up with stuff and maybe go to my marketer, publisher client and be like, look how many emails I helped you send. But if the person on the receiving end of that is like, I don't want this, then what are we doing? Like, what's the point of that? And so I think there's a focus on the receiver, the receiving user and what their experience is that we try to really keep front and center. I don't know about you, but everybody I talk to is just like absolutely exhausted by the amount of stuff that's being like slammed into their feeds and so forth. And so, can we be a part of like a slightly different way of approaching media and content on the internet? Like, I think I feel good about that too, just from like a human perspective. So that's a big part of it for us too.
For sure. And kind of along those lines, I'm guessing then what Letterhead does and your team does is help create that content that is of interest to the receiver. Is that correct? So you're not only helping deliver the newsletters and to the inboxes, but you're also helping them stand out and making it of quality.
Yeah, I mean, obviously our clients are the ones who produce the content, but we're in the business of helping them understand what's working, track behavioral engagement with different content topics, understand how they can kind of maximize engagement, with different readers by focusing on different content types, doing personalization and targeting, segmentation of the list, like all of those things. Yes, that's a core part of what our software does. And a big part of that is just like understanding the actual audience behavior. There are metrics that have been around the email space for a long time, open and click rates and things like that, which are useful, but they don't necessarily tell you in detail like what is working and where is there an opportunity for growth and so forth. And so those are a lot of the things that our product is focused on. And that kind of insight product strategy layer we think is really critical and kind of chronically underserved. And so that's where we put a lot of our energy.
So, with other platforms that are out there that offer similar solutions that you guys are, what differentiates Letterhead in this somewhat increasing crowded space?
Yeah, there's a lot of products that are email service providers, right? Your Mailchimps and campaign monitors and products like that in the world. We don't really compete in that space. Most of our customers they use us on top of their Mailchimp, their HubSpot, their Iterable, their whatever product they're using, and we help them basically multiply the value they get from that investment and make their production more efficient, improve their metrics, get more insight about the audience, and drive more. So we're not typically competing with those underlying products. The place that really differentiates us is on our focus on multi-newsletter publication. So most of our customers are publishing dozens or hundreds of different emails across their network. Agencies that work with many clients, they're managing emails for all of those clients. Publishers that have dozens or hundreds of different media brands under their umbrella, and each one has different newsletters that it publishes. We have a whole system that is about managing that portfolio of emails in one place and having consolidated data and operations and workflows and controls that typically doesn't exist in the products that people are coming from. A lot of the time, our customers are just using kind of manual process, right? They've got a spreadsheet they're managing everything from into the different systems or whatever, and we're sort of replacing that as well. So that's very common for us. And then the second thing is just the level of kind of strategic insight and partnership that we try to provide. We have a very hands-on account management process, and we work a lot with our customers to help them like actually understand and act on the data. So it's not just purely like, hey, here's your login to the tool. Good luck. Let us know if you need anything. We're actually there as like a partner to the customer in helping them get more data and bring those insights out and make them actionable, which we find is a key part of the challenge.
And what challenges or misconceptions do you think companies or publishers often have about monetizing newsletters? And how does that shape those conversations that you have?
I think one is that there's a kind of automated revenue channel that's going to work at scale for folks. I have a lot of reason to be skeptical about that, right? There are folks out there who will promise you a certain amount of advertising dollars. They'll say, "Oh, we'll bring you ads, we'll fill up your ad inventory," and many of those providers do that. But what we see a lot is that the quality can vary a ton. Programmatic advertising for email is not super great a lot of the time in terms of quality. You have to have a really big list for it to make financial sense. And some of the more bespoke ad networks, can bring really good stuff to the table, but you still as a publisher have to do a really good job of maximizing the engagement that you're going to get, of tracking the results and of kind of understanding, where ad slots should go and what's going to drive the right performance and what's going to be a good fit for the audience and so forth. I have yet to see a truly hands off, like, oh, this third party provider is going to come in and just like give everybody a bunch of money that really works at scale for a long period of time. You have to be an active partner in any of those solutions. We partner with a bunch of these ad network providers, and some of them are very good and they can bring really valuable stuff to the table. But it always requires the publisher to play an active role in maximizing getting the most value there. So I think that's one that the people who are in that business are selling based on ease, and which is nothing wrong with that. But I think sometimes it can be interpreted as like, oh, you just come in and we just, give you money. And maybe they see that in the first couple of months, or there's an initial thing there, but it's really hard for that to become a long, durable revenue channel. And I think in a lot of cases, do you want that revenue being controlled fully by this third party? That could disappear tomorrow, or the payout rates could change tomorrow. Like, again, you're leasing the kind of success of your business to somebody else. And I think there's some reasons to be skeptical about that. So that's a big one, I would say. The other on the opposite side of the equation is that you have to have a really large list in order to make money. I mean, we see a lot of folks with 10,000, 25,000 person email lists that have, a really cool product that people want to read, a good understanding of who their audience is, and a good way of placing and creating opportunities for sponsors and things like that that can drive revenue. That the amount of revenue per subscriber they're able to generate is really impressive. So you don't have to have like a massive list or a massive audience size to drive really interesting revenue. It's really more about what's the product, who is it a fit for, what's the strategy. That's really what matters.
That makes sense. So now I want to get into how you're growing because I know that you guys are successful, have landed some great partners. So how have you been able to attract and retain customers through your platform? What's been working well for you?
I mean, one thing that's been, obviously really big for us is just word of mouth and having existing customers, share their experiences, and, they have a good experience working with us, and then they tell other people, or, refer those people to us. Obviously, we love that when that happens. That's a really big one. The other thing we do is we're very active in conferences and trade shows and at different events in our industries. So we spend a lot of time in person with people. And I don't know, there's just kind of no replacement for being able to sit down across from somebody and like hear what they're experiencing and meet them face to face and understand, whether you could potentially be helpful to them. And so I think that's been really good. And post COVID, it feels like the kind of conference circuit has really had a great kind of rebirth because people are hungry for those experiences to kind of be together in person. And that served us really well as well. We do a lot of the traditional, outbound sales stuff too, of course, but those are two places where we spend more energy that I think works really well. We also try to do a fair amount of like value add content. So we do like white papers and guides and things like that on different parts of the email strategy universe. And those have often brought us really good opportunities because our philosophy is just like, let's make a useful piece of information. End of sentence, and then hopefully somebody reading that is like, okay, these guys seem like they know something. Maybe they can help me and we can go from there. But, sometimes you get these things where it's like, it's a white paper, whatever, give us your email. And then you open it and you're like, this kind of sucks. Like, there's not really any value in this. Like, they just wanted my email address. And then sometimes you open it and you're like, wow, what an amazing research report. Like, I can't believe they're giving this away for the price of my email address. And then, like, I don't know, you're more likely to want to interact with those people because they gave you some value first. So we try to be on that side of the equation.
So, when you think about your ideal customers, the ones that you're trying to connect with, what triggers or pain points usually lead them to finally say, okay, we need a tool like Letterhead?
I think there are 3. The first is it's taking time to produce and manage, the newsletters that they're doing. We talk to people who have, 5, 10, maybe as many as, 500 different email products they're managing. And the amount of human labor that's going into coordination, to, connecting the dots across systems, like all this sort of stuff, copy pasting content, getting things in and out every day, week in, week out, is just really taxing on growth. That's a big one. The second one is deliverability, and that's really about, am I getting into the inbox and are people seeing my emails? Are they going into the spam folder versus promotions versus into the inbox, and seeing, those things change. The rules have changed a lot very quickly in the last couple of years. They're going to keep changing. And so there's a thing about being able to stay on top of that that's really important. Again, I think that's something where people have sort of been able to like, okay, my platform is going to take care of that, but it's like not quite that simple anymore. And so there's an engagement that you have to have. So deliverability challenges is one as well. And then the third one is really opportunities to grow revenue. Like, how do I grow the user base? How do I drive more ad dollars? How do I drive more conversions to my own products and services? We see a lot of people saying, okay, I have these email lists, I have this newsletter I'm doing. Now, how do I increase the ROI? And that's not necessarily even a pain point so much as just like an opportunity for growth, in a sense that, there's more value on the table that I want to figure out how I could collect. And so those are the 3 things that typically bring people to our doorstep, or where we're talking to somebody and we say, hey, we might actually be able to help you with that, by plugging into what you're doing today and helping you kind of maximize it.
And so, of course, behind every success and growth, there are struggles that come along, right? So, what's been your biggest frustration or bottleneck in scaling Letterhead this past year? Was there a moment where you thought, kind of, why is this still so hard? Or I need to change something to get kind of past that block?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there are so many of those, but um, one is that we started working with larger and larger companies. We went from when we first started the business working with folks who had kind of smaller lists, and now a lot of our business is people with hundreds of different newsletters at a very different scale, and that's something that over the last year plus, like we've been doing very well and having a lot of success with, but prior to that, we were, trying to get ourselves ready to serve that type of customer. As we went into like 2024, we were sort of like, okay, can we do this? Is there an opportunity for us here with larger use cases? Because we built a lot of the underlying tools. And then it was like, okay, well, how do you make those work for people at scale? How do you, talk about what we do in the right way? How do we make sure we're delivering value for customers at that size and so forth? And so it was a long process that put us there. But really over the last 2 years, we've been able to see that, working very well, and where, a lot of our kind of most successful customers with the very best kind of numbers and ROI and so forth are operating at this large scale, even while we still have a lot of small and medium sized folks who work with us and get a lot of value out of the product as well. So being able to make that expansion was something that we worked on for a long time. And because I'm impatient, I was always like, okay, when are we going to get there? When are we going to get there? But fortunately, we have a team that is good at breaking projects down and moving through the process kind of week by week, right? Little by little, you get where you need to be. So that was certainly one. And then I think also we've had a lot of the challenges that come with growing the team and growing the headcount, where things that were done through internal knowledge and historical, knowledge just kind of through osmosis, now they have to be documented, and there has to be process, and you have to have a playbook that people can work from and repeat. And, now we have to have a sales team that can all work from the same kind of core messages and make sure they're delivering the product walkthroughs and demos the same way. And all of those things. And so that's really tricky as well, because you're not just sort of everybody's when you're 5, 10 people, it's like everybody can just kind of run off of their knowledge. In this universe, you have to really be good at like building systems and processes for things. And so I think that's a continual process that is never done. But I think, there's always friction there in any business that's growing. And the question is like, how good are you at recognizing that and developing the right processes and systems to respond to that problem before you're out over your skis and things start falling apart?
For sure. And what's the most painful or emotionally draining aspect of being in the newsletter business today? Whether it's from the product, sales, or even just from your perspective as a founder and CEO.
I think one thing that's really hard is seeing the way the changes in the business have impacted some of the smaller folks that we've worked with. We've had companies that are like small agencies and small publishers, 1 to 5 person kind of teams, that even the ones that really were having really strong, were sending to hundreds of thousands of people and having good email, engagement and good results. The broader kind of meta of their business, just like where they made their money, like web traffic, things like that, change very quickly, or they weren't able to kind of sustain what they were doing, right? We've had multiple cases like that where we knew the email channel was working pretty well for them, but the broader economics of that business for these very small publishers just sometimes doesn't make sense. And seeing that change very quickly over the last few years, that's been tough, because you have people where they're telling us like, hey, I like this, I'm getting good value, et cetera, but the broader business doesn't make sense anymore. Like that's a hard one. To have that kind of churn, because it's like, okay, well, we didn't really do anything wrong. Like it's like our product let somebody down or whatever. It's like a situation where these other external factors are hurting somebody, and especially your early customers, like you care about those people because they were willing to take a chance on our software when it was very early as well. So we've had people who have been with us since 2021, or earlier, have massive disruptions to their business, and a lot of them have made it through and been able to come out stronger, but some haven't, and that's always tough to see.
Definitely. And if you could wave a magic wand or snap your fingers and remove one obstacle that's slowing Letterhead's momentum, what would it be and why does that matter the most to you?
I mean, I think you always want to be able to get what you're doing in front of more people. I think that's a key thing. We're in the process of expanding into some new verticals that we have not done as much of in the past, where we've got a small group of customers that are using the product and giving us great feedback and where we're seeing a lot of value. And now we want to go sell more aggressively into other people in that vertical. That's one of those things that I think doing it well, it does take time because you have to get good data and make good choices and understand the market. And there's a lot of work that goes into it. But definitely if I could sort of skip us ahead on those things, and it's like, yeah, you just launch a new vertical, in the same quarter that you start to see the traction or whatever, like that would be amazing. I do think some of the methodical way we do some of that work, it serves us well in the longer term. But sometimes in the short term, you're like, yeah, I'd rather just like ship that tomorrow, and sort of see how it goes. But often that can be a recipe for wasting money in a way that doesn't, you don't need to. But that's probably one that I'm thinking about a lot these days.
Yeah. And so now looking ahead at, say, the next 12 months, what are the top two or three things that you feel like you absolutely need to accomplish for Letterhead to feel like it's made, a big leap forward or reach those goals that you want?
Well, that's a great one. I mean, we've got ambitious growth goals for the business for sure. In terms of revenue and customer growth, that's a place we're always putting energy. So that would go there for sure. But I also think we've done a lot of growing of our team over the last year and a half as well. I mean, we've more than doubled the size of our team and over 18 months, and so there's a lot of new people who are a part of our team, and being able to see them be successful and um, kind of go to the next level as the business grows, I think is also something that I think about a lot. Like, how can we build a good culture as the business is a lot larger and have folks be able to contribute at a high level and feel like they're glad they chose to come work with us, and we're glad that we chose to have them come work with us. And it's kind of two-way street there. And I think it can be hard to maintain that from a cultural perspective when the headcount is bigger because there's just more layers and there's more things happening and so forth. But we've got a special culture that has a particular kind of balance of like performance and camaraderie and trust, but also, support. And I don't know, I'm proud of what we've built there and making sure that we're able to keep that rolling as we grow. So that would be the other thing I kind of look to is, what's our employee satisfaction? How do people feel about working here? You know, um, how do high performers feel about being a part of what we're doing and so forth? Like that's, I think, really important to look at too.
Are you guys a remote company or do
We
you
are.
guys?
We're fully remote.
Okay. So I'm sure that adds a layer, right, of building that team, or how do you feel about having a remote first team?
It totally does. I mean, obviously, there's a bunch of things that are different. We got used to that very early, like pre-COVID and everything, because in the media business, we had people in multiple states just by the nature of being in many cities. And so inherently, like the business is remote in the sense that not everyone works together in the same office. And my philosophy is that as soon as that's true, even if you're a company with multiple offices, physical offices, like as soon as that's true, you're inherently remote in the sense that like people are distributed. And so you can't be like, well, everything just takes place here. Even I know people who run companies where they've got three or four offices in different locations, but everybody's in the office in those three or four locations. Even then, you have to be thinking about how do people from those different places talk to each other? What are the rules of communication, like procedurally and so forth? How do you build culture in those places and hopefully have that be consistent? Does one office have a different culture than the other? Like you have to be thinking about how you export and manage all of that stuff. I think it's kind of the same with a fully remote workforce where there is no office because you have to be thinking about how do people communicate? How do you export culture? How do you keep people on the same page? How do you set the right standards? How do you measure people's work? So I actually think some of the assumption that like it's easier to do those things when everybody's in the same place is wrong. But there are definitely notable exceptions to that. Like there's so much value you get out of having like salespeople in the same place working through a problem or certain kinds of strategic work where it's like we really just need to be together in front of a whiteboard. And like there's so many exceptions to that as well, where there's just no replacement for in-person work that I think you've kind of got to find a balance between those things. And I think we're always working on that. Like, I don't think there's any perfect solution, but like, how much should we get together in person and who should get together in person? And, what regions and time zones make sense? And like, there's just a constant kind of learning process there that we're going through. With all that said, the ultimate upside is we get to try and find the very best people that we can. End of sentence, basically, right?
Right.
Like, if I meet somebody and they're like, I was just on the phone with somebody today who I think would be a huge value add to a particular part of our team. They're in a relatively remote place. Like, that's just where they were family wise and so forth. And like, the number of places that are willing to work with them being in that, more rural location, like where they can't come to an office, is smaller. So like, great benefit to me. I get to potentially work with this amazingly talented person who brings something new to the table just by being flexible on that front. And like, what do I have to do in exchange? I have to have a system where I can trust that they're delivering the value that I need from them. Okay, right. Like, I'll take that trade off because it lets me potentially get this really amazing person on my team, and somebody who's not willing to do that work, who wants everybody in the office, because they think it's going to be easier to manage. Like, they miss out on that person. So I do think there's an upside there that you have to weigh against the challenges of working fully remote.
For sure. I definitely agree with everything you said. What do you feel most excited about and maybe a little nervous about as you look to kind of this next chapter of growth for you guys?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, let's see. I guess one final question before we wrap. What advice would you give to other founders or media entrepreneurs who are trying to build something meaningful in today's kind of noisy digital landscape?
Talk to users, talk to customers before you make anything. I think spending time with the people you want to serve is just so, so important. Um, that's one that we did, and I think is really important. One that we didn't do as early as we should have is just really building out that early P&L kind of financial model that is based on reality of where you are today and what like can actually happen in the next month. More like, imagine you're running a restaurant or you're running some other kind of very physical small scale business. I think what happens sometimes in people who are trying to build high growth companies that, you're early on, you're talking to investors, you're having conversations about the pitch for the business and how does it get big. And the financial exercise that often people do first is like, how does this become a big business? And that's an important question to ask for sure, particularly if you're like going to raise money or whatever. But that becomes a lot of founders I talk to who are in the earlier stages. Like, that's the first financial modeling thing that they're doing, is like figuring out how to make the business grow really to a really big, exciting number. And that just immediately leads you into delusional thinking, I think, because you're like, oh, if only the number grows by this much, then, and you can back into the wrong thing and you can try to get to a certain number by a certain time in an artificial way and so forth. It's really valuable to spend time with like, what happens if we're doing what we do, what we can do like right now for a year, like, okay, we got one customer. What happens if we get like one more a month for a year, whatever? Like, what does that look like? What can we do there? And like, just getting a sense of the real true foundation that you're building the house on, it's like way easier to build everything that comes after that. But if you sort of start by thinking about the biggest structure you could possibly make and you don't like really study that ground that you're currently on and that is like attainable in the short term, I think you end up with like really big dreams and very little to actually like secure them on. And then you don't understand how to navigate the business as it goes through these individual changes. So that's one of the things that we did way, way better with Letterhead as we were spinning that out and thinking about that from the beginning. That with the media business, I think we learned as we went on sort of how to do that work, and that can be costly.
Yeah, that's great advice. And for anyone who wants to learn more about Letterhead or connect with you, where is the best place?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. That's probably my primary social place. So you can definitely look me up there. Try letterhead.com. That's our website, or letterhead.ai. And if you're doing newsletter stuff, obviously we'd love to chat with you and, we can do a consultation, see if we can be helpful, but also founders and other folks that always love to meet new people. And please feel free to reach out.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to Mo's Market Pulse. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, like, leave us a comment, and join us again to hear more insights from leaders coming up on future episodes. And Chris, thank you so much again for spending some time with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.